The dim glow of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like distant thunder, casting long shadows across the cracked linoleum floor of the all-night diner. It was the kind of place where truckers nursed black coffee until dawn, and locals avoided eye contact, the air thick with the scent of stale grease and rain-soaked asphalt from the parking lot outside. Elena wiped down the counter for the third time that shift, her hands moving on autopilot, each motion a ritual to keep the ghosts at bay. 2 years, 2 endless years since her daughter Mia had vanished into the night, snatched from the edge of their quiet town, leaving only a child's backpack crumpled in the dirt. The police had called it a runaway case, closed it too soon, but Elena knew better. The ache in her chest never lied. She glanced at the clock, 2:17 a.m., another hour until relief. Outside, the storm had broken, rain pelting the windows in relentless sheets, turning the world into a blurred watercolor of neon and shadow. That's when the rumble started, a low guttural growl that vibrated through the glass, growing into a symphony of engines that drowned out the storm. Elena froze, her rag dripping forgotten onto the counter. Headlights pierced the downpour like searchlights, a convoy of motorcycles slicing through the night, their chrome frames gleaming wet under the diner's sign. 50, maybe more, they pulled into the lot in tight formation, leather-clad riders dismounting with the precision of soldiers. At their center was a young woman, no older than 18, huddled under a jacket too big for her frame, her face pale and streaked with rain. She clung to the arm of the lead rider, a towering figure with salt and pepper hair tied back and a scar tracing his jaw like a roadmap of old battles. His name was Jax, though Elena didn't know it yet, leader of the Iron Vow crew, men bound by oaths forged in fire and loss. The girl, terrified, eyes darting like a cornered animal, had been found earlier that evening, trembling on the roadside near the old mill, signs of recent hardship etched into her posture. Whispers among the riders spoke of a tip-off. She'd escaped something dark, a network of shadows that preyed on the vulnerable, trading lives for silence. The convoy had rolled up just as shadows closed in, faceless men in unmarked vans, their intent clear in the way they accelerated toward her. Engines roared to life, blocking the path, a wall of steel and resolve. No shots fired, no fists thrown, just the unyielding presence of brothers who remembered what it meant to protect the innocent. Jax had knelt then, his voice a gravelly anchor. "You're safe now, kid. We ride for promises like this." The girl nodded, whispering fragments of her story, names, places, a plea for trust. By the time they reached the diner, seeking shelter and a hot meal, she'd become their charge, a fragile spark in the storm. Elena stepped to the window, heart pounding against her ribs. The girl's profile hit her like a freight train, the slight tilt of her chin, the way she tucked a damp strand of hair behind her ear. It couldn't be, but the resemblance clawed at her soul, dragging up memories she'd buried deep, the laughter in their cramped apartment. Mia's favorite stuffed bear clutched tight during thunderstorms, 2 years of posters on telephone poles, sleepless nights, scanning crowds, the hollow echo of missing in every official dismissal. Elena's breath fogged the glass. She pushed open the door, the bell jingling like a warning, rain soaking her apron as she approached the group clustered under the awning. Jax turned first, his eyes narrowing under the brim of his weathered hat, assessing her like a threat in allies' clothing. The other riders formed a loose circle, hands near their belts, but no one drew. "Ma'am," Jax said, his voice steady but edged with caution, "we're just grabbing some grub. Storm's a beast tonight." Elena ignored the rain streaming down her face, her gaze locked on the girl. Up close, the details sharpened, a faint scar on her knuckle from a childhood fall off the porch swing, the subtle freckles across her nose that no amount of time could erase. "Her," Elena whispered, voice cracking like thunder. "The girl you're protecting. She's my daughter, Mia. She vanished 2 years ago." A ripple went through the group, murmurs, skeptical glances. The girl looked up, confusion flickering in her eyes, but no recognition dawned. Jack stepped forward, blocking the path slightly, his broad shoulders a barrier. "Lady, we've heard stories like this before. Good intentions, but words don't prove blood. You got something more than hope?" Elena's hands trembled as she reached into her pocket, pulling out a worn photograph, edges frayed from endless handling. It was Mia at 12, grinning beside a homemade cake, the one they'd baked for her birthday under the flickering kitchen light. But it wasn't the photo that would sway them. She fixed her eyes on the girl, voice steady now, laced with the quiet authority of a mother's unyielding truth. "You had a nightmare the week before that night. About the big oak tree in the yard falling on the house. I promised you then we'd plant a new one together, stronger, with roots that wouldn't break. You made me pinky swear under the stars, said it would keep the monsters away. No one else knows that. Not the police, not the reporters, just us." The girl's breath hitched, her hand flying to her mouth as fragments stirred, flashes of warmth. "Safety," a voice calling her name in the dark. Jax's expression shifted, the skepticism cracking like dry earth under pressure. He glanced at his second-in-command, a burly veteran named Reyes, who nodded slowly. The rain eased to a drizzle, the world holding its breath. This wasn't just a claim. It was a key turning in a long locked door, forcing choices that could unravel everything. For Jax, it echoed his own buried vow to a brother lost in the sands overseas, promising to stand for the voiceless. Helping this woman meant dragging his crew into a web of old secrets, challenging the silence that protected the powerful. But turning away, that would break something deeper. Elena stood taller, the weight of 2 years lifting just enough to breathe. The diner door swung open behind her, steam from fresh coffee wafting out, but no one moved. The convoy's engines ticked cool in the lot, chrome reflecting the first hints of dawn. What started as shelter for a stranger had ignited a chain reaction, binding fates in the unlikeliest of alliances. Justice wasn't a badge or a courtroom. It was this moment, raw and real, where truth demanded to be heard. If you're watching this and feeling that pull, the kind that reminds you, promises aren't just words, hit that subscribe button now. These stories of quiet courage need to reach more hearts like yours. The first rays of sun crept over the horizon, painting the wet pavement in gold as Jax finally spoke. "Inside, all of us, we've got talking to do." The door to the diner creaked open under Jax's push, a reluctant invitation that carried the weight of unspoken oaths. Steam from the coffee urn swirled like morning mist, mingling with the damp leather scent of the riders as they filed in, boots thudding against the floor in a rhythm that echoed their engine's fading growl. Elena led the way, her steps measured, each one a bridge over the chasm of doubt that had defined her nights. The girl, Mia, if Elena's words held true, followed close behind Jax, her fingers twisting the hem of the oversized jacket, eyes wide with the fragile hope of someone piecing together shattered glass. Reyes and the others spread out, claiming booths with the quiet efficiency of men who'd turned diners into war rooms before, their presence filling the space like a gathering storm. Elena flicked on the overhead lights, banishing the shadows that clung to the corners, and gestured to the counter. "Coffee's fresh. On the house." Her voice was steady now, laced with the resolve of a woman who'd rehearsed this moment in silent vigils. Jax nodded, sliding onto a stool, his scarred hands folding on the worn formica as if anchoring himself to the present. The girl perched beside him, her gaze flicking between Eleanor and the photograph still clutched in the woman's palm. The air hummed with tension, broken only by the patter of residual rain on the roof and the distant call of a rooster heralding dawn. Start from the beginning, Jack said, his tone low, not accusatory but probing, like a blade testing for weakness. He leaned forward, the lines around his eyes deepening, marks from too many sunrises chasing ghosts of his own. Years ago, in the dust-choked valleys overseas, he'd sworn to his brother-in-arms, Thomas, to watch over the ones left behind. Thomas hadn't made it home, his last breath a promise extracted. Keep the light on for the lost. Jax, don't let the dark win. That vow had birthed the Iron Vow crew, a brotherhood forged not in ink, but in the fire of shared scars, riding for the forgotten because turning away once had cost too much. Eleanor poured mugs with trembling precision, the dark liquid steaming like exhaled secrets. She slid one to the girl first, her hand lingering just a beat too long. You always took it black, with 2 sugars, remember? After school, when the world felt too big. The girl's brow furrowed, a flicker of something buried surfacing, tastes, textures from a life half-remembered. She sipped, the warmth spreading through her like a tentative thaw, and nodded faintly, unable to speak. 2 years ago, Elena began, her words unfolding like a map etched in grief. It was a humid summer evening, the kind where fireflies danced in the yard like fleeting hopes. Mia, 14 and full of that fierce curiosity, had slipped out to meet friends at the edge of town, promising to be back before the streetlights hummed to life. The backpack found in the ditch the next morning held her diary, pages filled with sketches of motorcycles roaring free, dreams of escape from a life hemmed in by worry and want. Elena had searched alone at first, knocking on doors, combing fields until her voice grew hoarse. The authorities arrived with clipboards and cold efficiency, labeling it a runaway, closing files while Elena's world fractured. Whispers of a local network surfaced, shadowy figures trafficking in silence, preying on the young and unseen, but evidence evaporated like mist, protected by badges and backroom deals. The riders listened, Reyes nursing his coffee with a scowl that spoke of similar tales. He'd lost a niece to the system's blind eye, the pain a quiet fuel for his loyalty to Jax. Now, as Elena spoke, the pieces aligned too neatly. The girl's fragmented story from the roadside, mentions of a safe house turned cage, handlers who vanished names into ledgers. Jax's jaw tightened. He'd pulled her from that mill road not an hour after a coded alert from an old contact, a nurse at a clinic who'd seen too many runaways with hollow eyes. The vans that pursued them bore plates from the county yard, a detail that stank of institutional rot, but proof. That was the crux, hanging in the air like smoke. The girl shifted, her voice emerging soft, tentative. I don't remember much. Flashes. A room with locked doors, voices saying I'd be sent away if I talked, but the tree, the promise. Her eyes met Eleanor's, and in that collision, recognition bloomed. Not full, but enough to crack the dam. Tears welled, unspoken bonds pulling taut. Elena reached across the counter, tracing the scar on the girl's knuckle with a feather-light touch. From the swing, you fell chasing butterflies. I kissed it better, told you scars make us stronger. Jax exchanged a glance with Reyes, the silent language of brothers weighing risks. This wasn't just reunion, it was ignition. Exposing the network meant peeling back layers of corruption, sheriffs on payrolls, clinics turning blind eyes, a web spun from the town's underbelly. The Iron Vow had skirted such shadows before, delivering quiet justice without fanfare. But this struck personal. Jax's hand drifted to the patch on his vest, the iron emblem of their vow, a fist clenched around a flame, symbol of endurance. Helping meant mobilizing the crew, riding into territories where loyalty was bought and sold, but ignoring it. That would echo the failure that took Tomas, the voiceless cry he'd sworn to answer. Outside, The sun climbed higher, casting golden shafts through the windows, illuminating dust motes like sparks ready to ignite. The diner felt smaller now, a confessional booth for fates intertwining. Elena's story wove through the morning light, detailing the pinky swear under stars, the oak tree's imagined fall, a private ritual against the night's fears. The girl, Mia, whispered affirmations, memories surfacing in waves, the taste of Elena's pancakes on Sundays, the lullaby sung through fevers. Doubt ebbed, replaced by a moral gravity pulling them all toward action. As the last echoes of Elena's tale faded, Jack stood, the stool scraping like a decision etched in stone. "We ride with truth," he said, voice resonant with the weight of old promises. "But we do it smart. Reyes, get the scouts on the wire. Check those vans, trace the mill." The crew murmured assent, a ripple of resolve binding them tighter. For Mia, it was the first step from shadow to light. For Elena, a hand extended across the abyss. The engines would roar again soon, not in fury, but in the quiet thunder of honor reclaimed. Dawn's light promised no easy path, only the unyielding road of those who choose family over fear. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The morning sun filtered through the diner's grease-streaked windows, turning the steam from cooling coffee into ethereal veils that danced across the room. Jax paced the narrow aisle between booths, his boots leaving faint imprints on the linoleum, each step a measured echo of the resolve building within him. The Iron Vow crew had settled into a vigilant hush, maps spread out on tabletops like battle plans from forgotten wars, fingers tracing faded lines that snaked through the county's backroads. Elena sat beside Mia, their hands linked across the scarred wooden table, a fragile tether against the tide of resurfacing memories. The girl's eyes, once shadowed by confusion, now held glimmers of clarity, fragments of a life stolen, piecing themselves back like a puzzle scattered by cruel hands. Reyes hunched over his phone, the screen's glow casting harsh angles on his weathered face. He'd already sent out the scouts, 2 riders peeling off at first light on their Harleys, engines fading into the horizon like whispers carried on the wind. "Got a hit," he muttered, voice gravelly from years of barking orders over roaring pipes. "Those vans from the mill. Plates traced to a county impound lot, but the logs are scrubbed clean. Someone's pulling strings, deep ones." Jack stopped pacing, leaning over the table, his shadow falling across the map like a harbinger. The air carried the faint tang of motor oil from the riders' jackets, mingling with the diner's lingering aroma of bacon and regret. Mia's voice broke the tension, soft but insistent, as if speaking aloud might solidify the haze in her mind. "There was a place, after they took me, not a house but like a warehouse by the river, men in uniforms, but not real ones, badges that didn't shine right. They said I was safe, but the doors locked from outside." She paused, her free hand tracing invisible patterns on the tablecloth, echoes of sketches from her old diary. Eleanor squeezed her fingers tighter, the mother's touch a silent vow renewed. No more nights alone, no more promises broken by indifference. Jax watched them, the scene stirring the embers of his own loss. Thomas's final letter. Tucked in his saddlebag, words faded but indelible. "Ride for the ones who can't, brother. Honor's the only chain that doesn't bind." The diner's bell jingled sharply, pulling all eyes to the door. A lone figure stepped in, shaking rain from a worn trench coat. Though the storm had long passed, the sky still hung heavy with clouds. It was Harlan, one of the scouts, his face etched with urgency. Beard flecked with road dust. He nodded to Jax, sliding into the booth with a creak of vinyl. "Boss, the mill's a ghost town now, but I found tracks, tire marks leading to the old bridge. And this." He pulled a crumpled flyer from his pocket, the paper damp and torn, bearing a grainy photo of a missing teen that wasn't Mia, but close enough to chill the room. Posted fresh, like they're covering steps. Word on the wire is, the sheriff's office got a call about trespassers at dawn. They're mobilizing. Jax's fist clenched subtly on the table, knuckles whitening against the dark wood. The sheriff, Corbin, a name whispered in biker circles like a curse, was no stranger to the Iron Vow. Years back, Jax's crew had crossed paths with him during a ride for a veteran's family, uncovering a side deal that smelled of graft. Corbin had let it slide with warnings, his smile as oily as the river mud outside, but the resentment lingered. Now, with Mia's truth hanging in the balance, it felt like the web tightening. "They know we're involved," Jax said, his voice a low rumble, eyes meeting Elena's. "This ain't just protection anymore. It's a stand." Elena straightened, the weight of 2 years fueling her fire. She'd spent those nights not just grieving but gathering scraps. Notes from a sympathetic clerk at the courthouse, whispers from neighbors who'd seen vans idling too long near the school. The network, it's tied to the clinic across town, the one that handles relocations. And I tried reporting it once, but they called me unstable. Said Mia ran because of me. Her words carried the sting of dismissed pain, the system's cold shoulder that had driven her to the diner's solitude. Mia leaned into her, the contact grounding, as another memory surfaced. They gave me a name there, Echo. Said it was for protection, but it felt like erasing. The crew stirred, murmurs rippling like wind through pines. Reyes marked the clinic on the map, a red circle blooming like a warning flare. Jax felt the pull of his vow deepening, Thomas's ghost riding shotgun in his mind. The Iron Vow wasn't about glory. It was the quiet code of men who'd seen empires crumble under lies. Helping Elena meant more than reunion. It was dismantling the silence that let shadows thrive. Proving that loyalty outlasted badges and bureaucracy. But the cost loomed, divided rides, potential clashes on rain-slicked roads, the risk of losing brothers to a fight not their own. Outside, the parking lot baked under the climbing sun, chrome glinting like drawn blades. Jax stepped to the window, scanning the horizon where distant sirens wailed faintly, a prelude to confrontation. "We move at noon," he decided, turning back to the group. "Scouts flank the clinic, eyes only, no engagement. Elena, you and Mia stay here with Lena from the back shift. She's solid." The waitress in question nodded from behind the counter, her own scars from a rough youth making her an unspoken ally. Mia's eyes met Jax's, gratitude mingling with fear. "Why help us? You don't even know." "Because promises are the roads we ride." Jax cut in gently, his scar catching the light like a badge of battles won through endurance. "Mine was made in the dark, overseas. Yours. Well, that's blood calling blood." The words hung, binding the room in shared purpose. Reyes pocketed the flyer, already texting coordinates, while the crew rose, vests straightening like armor donned for dawn. As the first engines coughed to life in the lot, the diner thrummed with anticipation, the air electric with the scent of impending rain and resolve. Elena watched Mia sip her coffee, the simple act of victory against oblivion. This alliance, forged in fluorescent glow and whispered truths, was no accident. It was the universe's quiet thunder, demanding justice not with fury, but with the unbreaking will of those who'd lost and risen. The road ahead twisted through moral minefields, but for the first time in years, Eleanor felt the weight shift, from solitary burden to collective strength. Jax mounted his bike last, the engine's roar a vow echoed in steel, as the convoy prepared to pierce the veil of secrets, guarding the clinic's shadowed doors. The noon sun beat down on the cracked asphalt like a relentless interrogator, turning the air into a shimmering haze that distorted the horizon. Jax throttled his Harley low as the convoy split. 3 scouts veering left toward the riverfront clinic. Their engines a subdued purr to avoid drawing eyes too soon. The rest hung back at the diner's edge, a loose perimeter of chrome and vigilance, Reyes coordinating via encrypted chatter on his helmet comm. Elena watched from the window, her apron twisted in her hands, the faint scent of fresh pie cooling on the sill, doing little to ease the knot in her gut. Mia sat beside her, sketching absent-mindedly on a napkin. Swirls of roads and trees, echoes of dreams half reclaimed. The diner's hum felt distant now, a fragile sanctuary amid the gathering storm. Harlan led the scouts, his bike hugging the overgrown backroads that wound through forgotten fields, dust kicking up in golden plumes that stung the eyes and coated tongues with grit. The clinic loomed ahead after 20 minutes of tense navigation, a squat brick building masquerading as Mercy, its sign faded to Riverside Health Center, windows tinted against prying light. No ambulances wailed here. Instead, a single unmarked van idled in the lot, exhaust curling like a secret exhaled. Harlan signaled a halt behind a thicket of overgrown pines, the needles whispering against their leathers as they dismounted. "Eyes only," he reminded his wingman, voices hushed over the comms. "Jax's orders, no heroes today." They crept forward on foot, boots silent on the soft earth, the river's murmur providing cover like an old ally. Peering through chain-link fencing, Harlan's breath caught. A side door cracked open. 2 figures in nondescript uniforms hauling crates marked medical supplies, fragile. But the movements were too hurried, too shadowed, glances over shoulders, whispers that carried no warmth. One scout, a wiry vet named Cole, snapped photos with a concealed lens, the click inaudible but his pulse thundering in his ears. "Looks like they're clearing out," Cole muttered. "Fast. And that van, same plates as the mill chasers." Back at the diner, Jax's radio crackled to life, Reyes relaying the feed. The crew gathered around a booth, faces taut under the fluorescent buzz, the scent of cooling engines wafting in on a breeze that carried hints of impending rain. Eleanor leaned in, her voice a thread of steel. "That's the place. I saw vans like that idling near the school once, picking up volunteers for community service. Lies, all of it." Mia's pencil stilled, her eyes distant, pulling at threads of memory. The sterile smell of antiseptic masking fear, hands guiding her into dim rooms with promises of safety that soured into silence. Jax absorbed it all, his mind tracing back to Thomas's last ride, not on 2 wheels but in a convoy overseas. Dust-choked patrols, where trust was the only shield against betrayal. That promise had pulled him from the bottle after the funeral, forging the iron vow from shattered remnants, ex-soldiers, mechanics, wanderers bound by the creed that inaction was the real wound. Now this web tugged at that core, corruption not in distant lands, but woven into the town's veins, badges shielding predators who traded in vanished lives. "They're spooked," Jack said, his scar twitching with the words. "Means we're close. But close to what? We need more than pictures." The scouts pressed on, circling the perimeter with the caution of men who danced with shadows before. Harlan spotted it first, a service entrance ajar, papers fluttering in the breeze like discarded confessions. He edged closer, heart pounding against his ribs, the metallic tang of the fence biting his palms. Inside, through the gap, voices drifted, low, urgent, laced with evasion. The girl's file, shred it, no traces after the transfer. A woman's voice, clipped and authoritative, perhaps a nurse or administrator. Harlan's camera captured fragments. A whiteboard scrawled with initials, dates blurred but recent, a ledger half open to pages of redacted names. One entry flickered into focus. Echo, relocated 2 hours prior, before a hand slammed it shut. Alarms blared suddenly, shrill and electronic, shattering the midday quiet. The scouts bolted. engines roaring to life as figures spilled from the clinic doors, security in ill-fitting vests, radios crackling calls to the sheriff. Tires screeched, the unmarked van peeling out in pursuit, but the bikers were faster, weaving through the pines like ghosts on steel. Bullets! None fired. This was a game of evasion, not escalation. Harlan's voice cut through the comms, breathless. "Boss, we got gold. Files mention a network, relocations to out-of-state ops, and a name, Corbin's signature on approvals. It's rotten to the core." The diner erupted in motion as the scouts thundered back, bikes skidding into the lot amid a cloud of dust that settled like fallout. Jax met Harlan at the door, clasping his shoulder, the weight of revelation settling heavy. Eleanor rose, pulling Mia close, the napkin sketch crumpling in her fist, a crude map of the warehouse by the river, Mia's subconscious gift. "They called her Echo," Mia whispered, the name tasting like ash, to make her forget who she was. The crew absorbed it, faces hardening into the quiet fury of those who'd chosen sides long ago. Reyes spread the photos on the counter, the grainy images painting a picture of institutional deceit. Vans, ledgers, the sheriff's seal like a mocking emblem. Jax paced again, the sun slanting lower now, casting long shadows that clawed at the walls. This wasn't abstract anymore. It was a direct challenge to the vow that defined them, protecting the voiceless against the machinery of indifference. Helping Elena and Mia meant riding into Corbin's territory, exposing alliances that could fracture the town, cost jobs, draw lines in the sand. But the alternative, echoing the silence that had claimed Thomas, the unheeded cries in foreign dust. "We confront him," Jax decided, voice resonant with finality, not with force but facts. "Tonight, at the old bridge, neutral ground." Eleanor nodded, gratitude etching lines softer than griefs. The air thickened with purpose, the distant river calling like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Mia traced the scar on her hand, the one from the swing, feeling the pull of roots regrowing. Outside, engines idled, ready to thunder toward truth, the iron vow's flame burning brighter against the encroaching dusk. This stand wasn't for glory, but for the quiet honor of mending what was broken, one revelation at a time. If this tale of hidden truths and unbreakable vows is stirring something in you, hit that like button. Your thumbs up helps these stories of moral fire reach the roads they need to travel. The twilight draped the old bridge like a shroud, the river below churning dark and restless under the fading sun, its waters murmuring secrets against weathered stone pilings. Jax eased his Harley to a stop at the midpoint, the engine's low rumble fading into the evening's hush, leaving only the faint creak of cooling metal and the distant call of cicadas. The Iron Vow crew flanked him in a loose semicircle, shadows lengthening across the gravel approach, their vests catching the last glimmers of orange light like embers refusing to die. Reyes idled to Jax's right, hand resting on the throttle, eyes scanning the tree line where the road curved in from town. No sirens yet, but the air hummed with anticipation, thick as the scent of damp earth and pine sap rising from the banks. Elena and Mia waited back at the diner, under Lena's watchful eye, the napkin sketch folded in Elena's pocket like a talisman. Jax had insisted this parley was for the crew, men hardened by choices that left scars deeper than skin. But the weight of their story pressed on him. Thomas's letter a phantom in his saddlebag, its ink a reminder that silence had cost steeper than any toll. The scout's photos burned in his mind, ledgers with Corbin's mark, Echo scrawled like a brand on erased lives. This confrontation wasn't vengeance, it was the slow unraveling of threads that bound the innocent to shadows, demanding truth in a world greased by lies. Headlights pierced the gloom from the east, 2 county cruisers rolling up slow and deliberate, gravel crunching under tires worn from chasing ghosts. Sheriff Corbin stepped out first, his silhouette broad against the beams, uniform crisp, but eyes shadowed by the brim of his hat. Flanked by two deputies, young, tense, hands hovering near holsters, he approached with the measured gait of a man who danced this edge before. No smiles, just the cool appraisal of authority facing a wall of resolve. "Jax," Corbin drawled, voice carrying over the water like a hook baited with false calm. "Heard you boys been stirring mud. This bridge ain't neutral ground tonight. It's a line." Jax dismounted, boots hitting the ground with a solid thud, the bridge vibrating faintly underfoot. He met Corbin halfway, the crew holding position, engines ticking like impatient heartbeats. Up close, the sheriff's face told tales of its own. Lines from deals in dim offices, a jaw set against the erosion of ideals long sold. "We're not here for lines, Corbin," Jax replied, his tone even, laced with the gravel of roads traveled too far. "We're here for the girl, Mia, 2 years gone, labeled runaway while your vans haul shadows. We've got pictures, logs, your signature on relocations that don't add up." Corbin's gaze flickered, a muscle twitching in his cheek, but he held steady, the river's rush filling the pores like an undercurrent of doubt. The deputies shifted, boots scraping, but Corbin raised a hand, stalling them. He'd built his tenure on the town's quiet complicity, clinics feeding the network, whispers of out-of-state opportunities for the overlooked, all shielded by the badge's weight. But Jax's crew had pierced that veil. Their vow a mirror to the sheriff's own buried regrets, a partner lost to the bottle after a botched case, promises to protect that curdled into compromise. "Stories," Corbin said, voice dropping low. "Kids run, families grasp. You ride in like saviors. But this town's got its ways. Push it, and things get complicated for everyone." Reyes leaned forward from his bike, the creak of leather cutting the tension. Complicated like scrubbed plates, or like flyers posted fresh to cover tracks? He tossed the crumpled paper toward Corbin's feet, the photo fluttering down like a fallen leaf. The sheriff didn't bend to retrieve it, but his eyes lingered, recognition dawning cold. The network wasn't his invention. Rumors said it started higher, threads to City Hall and beyond, but he'd turned blind eyes for peace, for the illusion of order. Now, with Mia's face staring back from Elena's claims, the illusion cracked, forcing a reckoning with the man he'd become. Jax stepped closer, the bridge's railing cool against his palm, the metal scarred from years of floods and forgotten crossings. "I made a promise once," he said, voice steady as the current below, "to a brother who didn't make it home, to stand for the voiceless, no matter the cost. You got one too, Corbin, badge or not. Help us end this, hand over the files, point us to the warehouse. Or we ride public with what we have, let the light do the work." The sheriff's deputies exchanged glances, the younger one's hand twitching, a kid fresh from the academy, ideals still unscarred. Corbin stared into the river, the water's foam catching twilight like fleeting truths. Memories surfaced unbidden. His own daughter, safe now, but once vulnerable in a world that preyed on the young. The network had brushed his edges once. A tip he'd buried to protect the peace, but peace built on silence was a hollow road, echoing the losses that hollowed men like Jax. "Warehouse by the river bend," Corbin muttered finally, the words tasting like surrender. "East access, guarded light. Files are coded. Echo protocol. But if this blows, it's on you. Town's fragile." Jax nodded, the concession hanging heavy. A bridge extended across divides. No handshaking, no fanfare, just the quiet shift of alliances forged in moral fire. The deputies backed toward their cruisers, engines coughing to life, taillights fading into the dusk like retreating doubts. The crew exhaled collectively, the tension uncoiling like a spring released, but Jax knew this was no end. Corbin's tip was a crack, not a shatter. The warehouse held deeper shadows, risks that could test the vow to its core. Back at the diner, word spread via Reyes's call. Elena's relief a tangible wave as she clutched Mia close, the scent of cooling pie mingling with tears of fragile hope. The girl traced her mother's hand, the scar a link unbroken, memories solidifying under the diner's warm glow. Jax mounted up as stars pricked the sky, the convoy's engines stirring like a waking beast. The road to the warehouse twisted ahead, through moral thickets where loyalty clashed with fear. But the iron vow rode unyielding, honor not as a chain, but as the flame guiding through the night. The first drops of rain pattered on helmets as they rolled out, the bridge receding in the mirrors, a threshold crossed. For Jax, it echoed Thomas's final patrol, the dust of distant lands replaced by this river's mist. Promises kept, one revelation at a time, binding the chosen family against the encroaching dark. The rain fell in earnest now, a silver veil that blurred the taillights of the Iron Vow convoy as they carved through the night toward the river bend. Jax led the pack, his Harley cutting a steady path along the serpentine road, the engine's growl harmonizing with the downpour's relentless drum on his helmet. Water streamed from his leathers, carrying the earthy scent of wet soil and river mist, while the crew followed in tight formation, shadows of loyalty etched against the storm-lashed pines. Reyes rode flank, his comms crackling faintly with updates from the scouts ahead, voices muffled like confessions in the wind. This warehouse wasn't just a building, it was the heart of the shadow. Corbin's tip a fragile key to doors long bolted against the light. Back at the diner, Eleanor paced the dim interior, the fluorescent hum a counterpoint to the thunder rumbling outside. Mia sat curled in a booth, a blanket draped over her shoulders, her fingers tracing the napkin sketch now pinned to the wall like a map of reclaimed ground. The scent of rain-soaked earth seeped through the cracks, mingling with the faint vanilla of Elena's pie, a remnant of normalcy in the chaos. Lena hovered nearby, her own quiet strength a silent sentinel, pouring fresh coffee that steamed like unspoken prayers. "They'll come back," Elena whispered, more to herself than Mia, her hand brushing the girl's damp hair, a touch that bridged years of absence with the warmth of blood rediscovered. Doubt lingered, a whisper of what-ifs, but the vow Jax had spoken at the bridge anchored her, promises as roads, unyielding even in flood. The warehouse emerged from the gloom like a forgotten relic, its corrugated walls slick with rain, hulking against the swollen river that lapped hungrily at its foundations. Floodlights pierced the downpour sporadically, casting erratic pools of yellow on the gravel lot, where two guards huddled under an overhang, their postures tense, cigarettes glowing like wary eyes. Jack signaled a halt in the tree line, engines cutting to a whisper, the sudden silence amplifying the rain's patter and the river's low roar. The scouts, Harlan and Cole, dismounted first, slipping into the shadows with the grace of men who'd navigated worse nights. "Light guard, as Corbin said," Harlan murmured over the comms, his breath fogging the mic. "But they're jumpy, radios buzzing about intruders." Jax nodded to the group, his face illuminated briefly by a lightning flash that etched scars deep as oaths. The crew fanned out, a perimeter of resolve, vests darkened by water but spirits unbowed. This ride echoed the patrols of his youth overseas, dust replaced by deluge, but the core remained, standing for the silenced, Thomas's flame flickering in every cautious step. No charges, no clashes, just the pursuit of truth. Files that could shatter the network's hold, free not just Mia, but the echoes of others lost to relocations. Reyes gripped his handlebars, eyes on the warehouse door, the weight of his niece's memory fueling the quiet fire. "We get in, get proof, get out," Jax instructed, voice low over the static, "for the girl, for the vow." They moved as one, boots crunching softly on sodden ground. the rain masking their approach like a conspirator. Harlan reached the side entrance first, a rusted panel ajar from the storm's fury, hinges groaning like a reluctant witness. Inside, the air shifted, stale and metallic, laced with the faint chemical tang of old paperwork and something sharper, like fear distilled. Dim bulbs swung overhead, casting swaying shadows across crates stacked high, labels peeling to reveal glimpses of forms. Intake sheets, blurred photos of faces young and haunted. Cole's flashlight beam danced carefully, illuminating a corner office where a desk lamp burned low, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Voices drifted from deeper within, two men, tones clipped and urgent, the echo of authority fraying at the edges. The Echo Files. Burn what's left. That biker crew's too close. Sheriff's sweating. Jax froze in the doorway, heart steadying against the surge of adrenaline, the rain dripping from his brow like unshed resolve. He gestured Reyes forward, the pair edging closer, concealed by towering shelves that reeked of dust and damp cardboard. The men turned, one a burly figure in a faded uniform, the other slimmer. Clipboard in hand, likely the clinic's overseer, his face pale under the harsh light. Before Jax could signal retreat, a crate shifted, Cole's boot catching an edge in the slick floor. The thud reverberated, sharp as a betrayal. The men spun, shouts cutting the air. "Who's there?" Lights flicked on, flooding the space in stark white, erasing shadows. The guards from outside burst in, radios blaring, hands reaching for restraints rather than weapons. A calculated restraint that spoke of operations preferring silence over spectacle. The Iron Vow closed ranks, a wall of leathers and unyielding stares. Jax stepping forward with palms open, the Vow's emblem on his chest, catching the glare like a challenge. "We're not here for trouble," Jax said, his voice cutting through the din. Rain pooling at his feet. "We're here for the truth. The girl you called Echo, Mia's files. Hand them over and we walk. Fight this, and the light finds everything." The overseer faltered, eyes darting to the desk where a shredder whirred idly, half-processed pages spilling like confetti of concealed sins. Memories clashed in the tension, his own fall into the network. Lured by promises of order in a chaotic town, now crumbling under the weight of exposed lies. The burly guard hesitated, glancing at his partner, the moral fracture widening. Loyalty to a rotten core, or the pull of something cleaner, the quiet justice Jax embodied. Reyes snatched a folder from the desk in the standoff's blur, stuffing it into his jacket, the paper crinkling like a secret breaking free. No blows landed, the air thickened with standoff, the river's roar outside a reminder of currents too strong to dam. The overseer raised a hand, voice cracking, "Take it. Just go. It's bigger than us. City ties, funding streams, but the files, they name names, roots. Echo wasn't alone." His words hung, a reluctant confession, the first thread unraveling the web. Jax nodded once, backing toward the door, the crew withdrawing in measured steps, folders clutched like hard-won relics. Outside, the rain lashed harder, engines roaring to life as they mounted up, the warehouse receding in a blur of lights and regret. Harlan's comms buzzed with the diner's relay, Elena and Mia safe, the night holding its breath. Jax throttled forward, the convoy slicing through the storm, files heavy in Reyes's grip, pages detailing Echo Protocol, vanished youths rerouted to shadows beyond the county, signatures linking Corbin to higher chains. This haul wasn't victory but ignition, a moral blaze threatening to consume the corruption's facade. The road twisted back toward dawn's faint promise, water sluicing from chrome, the scent of wet leather and resolve filling the air. For Jax, it stirred Thomas's echo, the brothers' vow alive in every mile. Protect the lost, mend the broken. Elena would pore over those pages come morning, truths solidifying Mia's return, forging their chosen family stronger. But the network's reach loomed, A final stand brewing in the storm's wake, honor demanding one more ride into the heart of the silence, where redemption waited not in glory, but in the unbreaking light of promises kept. The first light of dawn pierced the storm's remnants, turning the rain-slicked roads into ribbons of silver that gleamed under the iron vows convoy. Jax throttled steady, his Harley's frame vibrating through the damp chill, the files tucked securely in his saddlebag like a heartbeat against his side. Water dripped from the pines lining the route, carrying the crisp scent of rinsed earth and river mud, while the crew rode in solemn formation. Tires hissing on wet asphalt, engines a low symphony of endurance. Reyes flanked him, the folder's weight a tangible anchor. Pages whispering of names erased and lives rerouted under the Echo Protocol. No pursuit trailed them. The warehouse's shadows had yielded without a fight, but the victory felt fragile, like glass forged in fire. Back at the diner, the neon sign flickered to life with the rising sun, casting a warm glow across the parking lot where puddles mirrored the sky's tentative blue. Elena stood at the window, her silhouette etched against the steam from a fresh pot of coffee, the aroma mingling with the ozone tang of cleared air. Mia huddled beside her, wrapped in a dry sweater from Lena's backroom stash, her eyes tracing the horizon where the rumble grew nearer. 2 years of fragmented nights had led here, the pinky swear under stars, the oak tree's imagined roots now symbolizing a family regrowing from stolen soil. Lena busied herself at the counter, wiping mugs with quiet efficiency, her own unspoken losses making her a silent pillar in this unfolding dawn. The bikes pulled in with a gravelly deceleration, engines cutting one by one until silence settled, broken only by the drip of water from helmets and the distant trill of waking birds. Jax dismounted first, his boots splashing in a shallow puddle, the scar on his jaw catching the light like a badge polished by resolve. He pulled the folder free, its edges damp but intact, and strode toward the door, the crew following in a wake of leather and quiet triumph. Elena pushed it open before he reached, her face a map of hope etched deep, pulling Mia forward. "You brought it back," she breathed, voice thick with the weight of revelations waiting. Inside, the diner transformed into a council of truths, sunlight slanting through the windows to illuminate the scarred tables where the files spread open like wounds laid bare. Jax slid the folder across, his hands steady from years of holding oaths tighter than reins. "Echo Protocol," he said, voice gravelly from the night's roar, routes to out-of-state holds, clinic logs tying Corbin and Hire, city council shadows, names, dates, enough to light the dark. Reyes added photos from the raid, grainy captures of ledgers and crates, the air filling with the faint musty scent of old paper as pages turned. Mia's fingers trembled as she touched a sheet bearing her alias, the ink stark against the yellowed stock. Flashes returned in full now. The warehouse's cold floors, voices assigning numbers over names, the slow erosion of self until only survival remained. "They said it was temporary," she whispered, leaning into Eleanor. "The mother's arm a shield reborn. Safe houses for the troubled, but it was erasure." Eleanor's eyes scanned the documents, piecing together the network's threads. Local pickups masked as aid, vans vanishing into the night, approvals rubber-stamped by those sworn to protect. Her own dismissed reports stared back, the system's indifference now exposed as complicity. The crew gathered close, Harlan and Cole leaning in, their faces softened by the morning light filtering through rain-streaked glass. Jax watched it all, Thomas's letter a ghost in his pocket, the brothers' words resonating, "Keep the light on for the lost." This raid had fulfilled that vow, not through fury, but the steady burn of exposure, justice as a quiet thunder rolling in to wash away corruption's grime. Reyes nodded toward the files, his voice a rumble. "We ride these to the state line contacts tomorrow. Clean channels, no badges involved. Let the feds unravel the rest. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, the iron vows bond, tightening like chains forged in shared fire, chosen brothers standing where blood alone might falter. Elena closed the folder with a decisive snap, the sound echoing like a door shutting on 2 years of night. She turned to Jax, gratitude carving new lines in her face, softer than grief's etchings. "You didn't have to," she said, pulling him into a brief, fierce embrace that smelled of coffee and resolve. "But you did. For her, for us." Jack stepped back, his eyes meeting Mia's, recognition full now. The girl's chin tilting in that familiar way, freckles vivid under the diner's glow. "Promises are roads," he replied simply, echoing the bridge's words. "We ride them together." As the sun climbed, casting golden pools across the linoleum, the diner filled with tentative normalcy. Plates of eggs and toast passed around, steam rising like exhaled relief. Mia sketched again, this time a convoy under a sturdy oak, roots delving deep into sketched earth, symbols of endurance, family woven from strangers' loyalty. Outside, the bikes dried in the warmth, chrome sparkling like renewed vows. Corbin's concession at the bridge had cracked the facade, but these files would shatter it, freeing echoes beyond Mia. Other youths, other mothers waiting in silent vigils. Jax lingered at the counter, nursing black coffee, the bitter warmth grounding him as the crew planned the handoff. The network's fall wouldn't be swift. No dramatic raids, just the inexorable light of truth infiltrating shadows. For Elena, it meant rebuilding, planting that promised tree in their yard, watching Mia's laughter chase away monsters. For the Iron Vow, it was legacy. Honor as the legacy left behind, sacrifices silent but profound. Tomas's flame burned steady in Jax's chest, the brothers' promise kept through this chosen kin, proving redemption came not in isolation, but in the ride shared. By midday, the convoy rolled out once more, files secured for the journey, engines fading into the horizon like a vow carried forward. Elena and Mia waved from the door, the bell jingling softly in their wake, the scent of fresh-baked hope lingering in the air. The road stretched endless, but for the first time it led not to loss, but to mending. The quiet power of loyalty triumphing over silence, one dawn at a time. If these tales of promises kept and families forged have touched your road, thank you for riding along. Hit that subscribe button and join the convoy. More stories of quiet courage await, ready to light your way.